everyone, my name is Mary Beth Montrichard and I will be presenting The Versatile Leader by Bob Kaplan to you today. This book is essentially considered a great resource tool by business professionals and human resource hiring managers as well. The book is broken into 3 separate parts. The first part consists of the perspective on leadership assessment. The second outlines the 2 major opposing views in leadership, and the third offers prescriptions for development. In the first part, there are 4 major highlights. The first is learning not to overuse your strengths, something that they refer to as the Goldilocks method. In this method, you learn about volume control, learning when to turn up or tune down your strengths. For example, a leader who is able to adjust and adapt to different situations would be considered a versatile leader, whereas more authoritative roles require them to utilize their strengths. Group discussions and team huddles require you to be more passive in your approach. For every strength, there is a weakness. A great leader is able to not only identify their strengths, but understand their weaknesses. Essentially, your strength is something that's neutral, and your weakness is like a vector off to the left side, while utilizing your strength in excess is a vector off to the right. In the book, this is outlined kind of like a seesaw, where your strength is in the middle, and you see both of these contrasting lopsided views seesawing back and forth. It's this duality that's presented in this book, which is a new concept that we really haven't seen before. Excess of strength can be seen as great detriment, almost as much so as a weakness. However, it's extremely difficult to assess. Why? Basically, it shows up on an assessment as what? It doesn't show up on an assessment. And that's the major problem, and that's something that's outlined in the book. Someone who scores tremendously high across the board on an assessment tool just looks like they're a great candidate as a manager, while there's underlying issues that may not be addressed. And there's different assessment tools in this book that are able to highlight if there's an overusage or excess usage of their strengths. The 4th concept in the first part of this book is the importance of mindset. A lot of us find that it's tempting to maximize what we deem is well worth our time. If our gauge is off center, our mindset results in a leader that is believing their strength might be better or worse than it actually is. These mindsets are often off-rooted into trigger points that activate an overkill or an avoidance reaction. For example, a manager who reacts too quickly without accumulating all the necessary facts through discussion has an essential belief that inaction is bad, and as a result, an unconscious fear that he or she will be not considered a valuable asset to the organization, and as a consequent result, fired. So they make a rash, quick decision, which can ultimately be detrimental. This lopsidedness occurs not only from embracing a single truth, but also by simultaneously rejecting the opposing truth. However, in order to be a leader in an environment that's constantly changing, it's important to possess both complementary truths. The second part of the book deals with the concepts of opposition in leadership. There's 2 major facets. The first is utilizing forceful and enabling leadership, and the second is the introduction of strategic and operational leadership. Forceful and enabling leadership is how people work. How do they move and operate within the confines of an organization, interacting with each other? Versatility does not mean being homogeneous. Just because one method is utilized more frequently than another does not mean that the opposing type of leadership style will never become necessary. For instance, a forceful leader who develops their capacity to be a leader who's an enabler by actively listening to their counterparts is able to broaden their range and their capabilities. In doing so, they're able to oscillate between the two styles with more ease. How does this lopsidedness look in this forceful versus enabling dynamic? Well, in the book, it's presented as a 4-column assessment where you have qualities of an enabler, qualities of a forceful leader, and you have excessive usage on either side. Because again, duality is key, and you have to present both types of leadership in comparison together. Strategic versus operational leadership is the content of how people work, their actual work. And this essentially is managing versus leadership. This is a concept that we are extremely familiar with by now in week 6 of our class. Strategic leadership deals with long-term success, focusing on executing a lot of different processes with varying timelines, while operational leadership deals with short-term results, focusing on executing very few specific processes efficiently. Data collected by the Leadership Versatility Index shows that managers who favored strategic or operational leadership styles gravitated towards 2 specific types of roles: an idealator, or someone who comes up with ideas. Their personality tends to be intellectually curious, less methodical, or an implementer, someone who oversees the actual implementation of the ideas. They are seen more as conformers or methodical people. And it's interesting because they found that while people gravitate for more than one role, very rarely do you see an individual who is extremely proficient at both. So the third and final part of the book offers prescriptions for development, or ways that you can assess this lopsidedness and how to go forward from there. So there's 4 major ways that you can achieve that: throttling back, revving up, adjusting both sides, and being a multi-versatile leader. Throttling back is acting as kind of catching yourself by knowing what signs to look for, interrupting that kind of knee-jerk reflex response to situations that you normally have. It's kind of wanting to eat that cupcake when you know you shouldn't have it and telling yourself, no, I can't have that. So you have to reset your think gauge and basically restructure the way you approach a situation. It's not easy, but at the end of the day, it's something that has to be done if you want to grow as a leader. Revving up forces yourself to do more of something that you might potentially be afraid of or that you don't believe in. For instance, public speaking, or thinking strategically, learning to actively listen instead of constantly talking. In recalibrating your gauge, you are questioning these self-limiting assumptions that you have unconsciously placed on yourself. Adjusting both sides is your ability to begin to identify the opposing virtue. Again, this is the same concept I was discussing earlier, where communication is important and being able to see the other side. The more frequently you're able to identify your weaknesses or identify situations in where you are overutilizing your strengths, you can scale back a lot more efficiently. And the 4th and final concept is being a multi-versatile leader. The way it's presented in this book, which is kind of the pinnacle of everything, is it being too much? You know, being able to see both sides of everything, does that mean that you can't ever go to an extreme? Well, no. All that means is that you can go to an extreme, but you know when it's necessary. You know, when it's necessary to use force, when it's necessary to step back and let your subordinates have their moment to shine. You have the foresight and the ability and capabilities to do that. So my overall thoughts on the book were that it was extremely interesting. As initially, I was kind of trepidatious about it, but by chapter 2, I really liked it, and I agreed that the duality of presenting both types of leadership and weaknesses and both excessive strengths is important. I'd never thought of it that way, and I think when you have that aha moment of having to pair them together, that leadership qualities have to be paired together. It's not just, oh, I'm a great listener, I communicate well. Well, you have to pair both of them together. I'm a great listener, but I know how to delegate. I listen well, but I can do the opposite of that. So when you're speaking about your abilities in terms of leadership on your next resume or job interview you go for, that's something that you can think about in the way you present yourself. I love that the assessment tools included are a great jump start to reflecting on your own abilities, as well as the questions at the end of each chapter kind of give you a chance to reflect constantly throughout the book and not just at the end. In terms of our class and the articles that I felt tied in best with this book, the first one was by Dobney and Klassen, an article on innovation. I think it's important for leaders to be versatile and adapt in an organization where change is constant, and obviously being versatile, that shows that to a T. The second was Dugan and O'Shea on growing talent strategically. I think this book would be a great asset to hiring managers, because hiring managers within an organization is an important concept that we've seen throughout our course already. Having the ability to assess these candidates based on not only their weaknesses, but on if they're overutilizing their strengths, and if they're truly a well-rounded candidate, if they're an innovator versus an implementer, and all these different characteristics that are shown in the assessment tools in this book would give them a better idea of managers that they would be able to hire. And not only hire, but who would excel faster within their managerial programs. So overall, I think it's a great read, and I hope that everyone will want to read it at some point, and that you do take away some really important concepts from it. So thank you for allowing me to present to you.